In the not-so-distant future, year being 2040, just 16 years later from now, human beings look for increasingly strange solutions in hopes of finding connection and community. Despite technology being one of the culprits assumed to cause a distance between humans, lonely people further look to technology and science for answers, distrusting previous institutes that supposedly brought people together. One such new technology is a psychically powerful lab-synthesized fungi. The protagonist, who happens to be a medical student at the local university, has been brought in to study its application to a human host. Right from the start, it seems suspicious to why a medical student would be asked to study a new powerful lab-synthesized entity rather than well-experienced experts. It's clear the scientists who were involved with synthesizing this fungi need a human guinea pig to experiment on and test the effects of the fungi on. I wouldn't know what was going on in the student's mind at that point, whether excitement for being part of something bigger, something experimental, or if he had any doubts or suspicions that he is being lured into a place where he cannot return from. From now on, I will name the protagonist Rami, non-canonically. You must be the new student Dr. Morrison was speaking of. I hear you're quite bright. Have you studied a psychical transvolution flowering before? Rami, excited yet worried, not knowing the full scope of what he's supposed to do there as part of his studies, listens carefully to the scientist, who finally reveals that he is the one who will be the human host for the fungi to grow on, to study the full effects of this organism on him. This makes Rami's head go blank for a second, with his ears ringing, not able to yet accept the fact that he will be the first-hand witness to a human experiment, someone who will be assisting in it, seeing someone transform with a new experimental technology. This is a new technology being developed in hopes of solving a growing concern and problem that people are becoming more and more lonely, not able to make successful connections with each other. According to the way that this fungi is labeled, having psychical properties, that means that this fungi will enable humans to know the future and have the ability to explore the unseen, which gives them the capability of unlocking parts of the mind limited to the things one is used to. With this discovery and development, allowing people to be transcended versions of themselves, not requiring connections with each other or making it much easier. The scientist explains that his brain waves are linked to a scanner, which allows Rami to read his brain activities or any change in his bodily systems, hoping to be able to communicate beyond human speech in different ways that are seen and observed through other entities or creatures, and the ways yet unknown and undiscovered. In awe of the technology that he has to use, Rami starts scanning the scientist on the topical, skeletal, and nervous levels. On the surface level, essentially skin deep, what is observed, the fungi, which strangely has a shape of a face, is attached to the scientist's leg, which seems to be growing and spreading, fusing with his body. In skeletal level, the growth is observed to being very aggressive, trying to make its way to the scientist's nervous system and brain. As Rami examines the scans carefully, he discovers something out of ordinary in the nervous system, finding a device implanted in the brainstem. The scientist, happy with the student's skills at finding it, happily explains that this device disables primordial inhibitors that were evolved since the beginning of time to safeguard body from certain intruders such as the fungi, hence making this operation possible, bypassing any safeguards. The specific safeguard limits bodily and mental reactivity to meta-existential stimuli, meaning that this mushroom will enable humans explore different ways of communication beyond what is known. In not too many words, the flowering is an evolutionary aberration, one which requires some retooling of our formation of mental concepts. For example, one who has flowered does not experience the human idea of time. With our regular monkey mind, if trying to understand this concept, we would surely go insane. Moving on, scanning the skeletal form, a rot is observed going up the scientist's leg as if looking like a hand reaching up. The scientist explains that his bones are rotting, an excruciating pain he's never experienced before, yet something he's embracing to reach his full potential. Soft bones are required for the PTB to do its work, basically the mushroom or the fungi organism. When the pain is too great and I cannot keep my cool and appearances anymore, I want you to keep your cool and carry on, as it all should be academic. The flowering requires a soft, pliable body to grow. Its effects are both psychical and physical. Moving on to the topical scan, pinpointing the fungi that is growing awfully similar to a human face, something Rami cannot take his eyes off of. The scientist explains how that is the injection site where Dr. Morrison took a bone-deep needle and injected a successfully synthesized PTB. The face you see is because its physical manifestation draws from a shared pool of all its denizens' traumas, fears, dreams. I believe that's my mother's face on my shin. I really miss her. This powerful revelation from the scientist's host, allowing such a horrific experiment be carried out on him, runs shivers down Rami's spine, and equally my own, of how horrifyingly intelligent this mushroom is. Imagine a real-life scenario where a type of lab-synthesized fungi has such powerful properties which allows human bodies to deform and change shape, impacting the psyche and the brain, letting people unlock abilities limited by the body. The mushroom itself manifests a physical form according to the host body's mental condition, its dreams, memories, fear, and trauma, and everything else. For the scientist, something that overtook most of his memories and thoughts, a powerful figure in his mind, was his mother. Hence why the mushroom forms in the shape of his mother, getting a physical manifestation purely based on the memories and unseeable ideas within the mind. If this organism is so powerful, it's possible it would be able to create a clone of an idea or a memory based on the host body's perception. This experiment being purely scientific and academic, with a willing participant for the betterment of human life, the tragedy and the horror involved is undeniably horrific. Certain fungi in the real world have psychological altering properties, with the host or the user having different experiences based on their psyche and life experiences. If one has trauma and unresolved fears, they express them and see them more vividly. If one is free of guilt and pain, they might experience a different world, and in here, the fungi has the ability of physical manifestation according to the host's experiences and memories. That's when the flowering process progresses, with the scientist feeling it within his bones, nerves, and brain, quickly asking Rami to pass his wallet to him to bite down on, as it will be excruciating to another level, feeling pain in his bones, skin, organs, nerves, and every single cell of his body. Sorry, I seem to have bit down too hard and broken a couple of teeth. Give me a moment to spit them out. Now then, as you can see by my face, I am midway through the flowering process. Hurrah! And my body has experienced amazing and terrible growth. See for yourself. Despite the enthusiasm of the scientist and a seemingly lack of care, Rami cannot hold himself from looking terrified and being on the verge of leaving, seeing the horrific life transformation of the scientist that he just met a few minutes ago, who has now transformed to almost an undistinguishable being, not being human anymore. Scanning his body, the eerie revelation of the fungi almost fully taking over his body makes Rami tremble uncontrollably. His skeletal scan shows how his bones are all affected and overtaken by the growth, and his nervous system is unrecognizable to be of any humans. The scientist explains that he feels the inkling of a panpsychic connection and terrible yet amazing growth within him. This essentially means how he feels a connection with many things and beings, able to connect with their mind and consciousness. Starting from the nervous system scan, Rami finds the source of the new mind being the site of the injection and the growth of this organism, to how his own mind will disintegrate and join the hive mind.
What remains of my body becomes a small distribution of other flowering mind brains. As we speak, I am flooded with powerful memories that are not my own. I feel, well, I is not the right pronoun to use anymore. Even to distinguish ourselves from our timeless unity seems wrong. I feel infinite pleasure and infinite pain.
According to what the scientist describes, he has joined a hive mind free of the confines of time, as the beginning doesn't have a start or end anymore, feeling as if he's been always part of them. He has joined others who have been through so much pain, misery, pleasure, and fortune, through mountain of wisdom and lackluster life and experiences. His connection with the others has become so powerful that he doesn't feel he is an individual anymore. Rami, being speechless to what he is witnessing, continues on, feeling numb and overwhelmed. Scanning the skeletal form, it resembles a human skeletal structure. However, the bones have all been fragmented and put back together, being very soft and malleable, being a complicated and beautiful lattice work. Scanning the topical body, essentially what can be seen with naked eyes, the scientist's hands have fallen off as they were in the way of the growth and the progress. The growth has almost overtaken, with the face of the scientist having changed. Despite this horrific transformation, the scientist is happy and looks forward to the transformation to complete. As the transformation reaches the final stages, the scientist talks to himself as he is complete, united and not an individual anymore, feeling pain, pleasure, death, and everything else, and in one simple word, being happy, experiencing the absolute happiness before he disintegrates into a blob, unrecognizable as any known being. This ends the experiment with Rami witnessing something he would never imagine in his worst nightmares, wondering if this would be something the people will rely on as a new way to overcome loneliness and isolation, becoming part of a hive mind. It goes without saying, the unnamed scientist volunteered to go through such a horrific experiment, changing his essence as a human and enduring unbearable pain, possibly in the name of science and betterment of human life. But is that really what his primary intentions were, or was there something deeper that he did not express? Throughout the operation, with Rami standing witness to what's happening, the unnamed scientist only expressed his pain when it was unbearable by shouting and screaming and playing it down as it's not important. He didn't even introduce himself and kept appearances that he is entirely happy with what is happening, as if his individuality and his life never mattered. But in reality, a lot more was possibly going on in his mind. He briefly talks about his mother, who he misses dearly, presumably being dead now. Someone he thinks about so much that the initial stage of the growth manifests in the shape of his mother. He doesn't expand on this anymore and apologizes for speaking too much, which reveals what a cagey and isolated man he is, not willing to express himself. Usually, being cagey and closed leads to one finding it difficult to find friends and relate, which is a characteristic we see in the scientist. The entire experiment to begin with was to find a solution to target human isolation and loneliness, something that the scientist studied greatly and finally volunteered to be the first test subject. I personally believe that the scientist himself suffered greatly from isolation and the feeling of loneliness, especially after the passing of his mother. The clue being that he briefly talks about her and how much he misses her, with the fungi manifesting in her shape. The scientist spent most of his life studying this mushroom and eventually was willing to experience unimaginable pain losing his limbs and having his bones restructured just to overcome his feeling of loneliness, which explains the length that he was willing to go not to feel alone. The pain of loneliness was so great that no other physical or nervous pain could compare, willing to lose his humanity and his life just to overcome it and help others. The story of the game is a great allegory to the way society as a whole today suffers from isolation, as the pain and feeling of loneliness and being unloved, uncared for, or unlistened to is so great that people try so much to cure it. People go to great lengths from their institutes, their groups and organizations just to feel being part of something they can relate, people who would listen to them. The scientist was a good example to how the feeling of being alone compares to nothing else, with more and more people unfortunately reporting that they are more alone than ever before. This was the story of a tragedy, that a man was willing to do so much and was willing to lose so much just not to be alone. Anyway folks, this brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. As always, it's been your host Star, and I will see you on the next one. Have a fantastic day.